You can go and watch. I had not one, not two, but 10 people in this installment say, yeah, I think all lives matter. I think anyone who says that's white supremacy is out of their mind. They don't speak for us, the black community. I'd never know.
I love how he brought this up as an example. It's like, and by the way, I'm not one of those people, okay? I'm not saying that I want to, like, I am racist, like the people accused of racism. Piers Morgan is trying to do this dance right now where he's the world's most perfect centrist. He brings on everyone of every political ideology onto his uncensored show to talk about whatever he wants, and that he's the one true, I would say, noble lib, the white savior that the world needs. And then it's odd he'll do those kind of things when he, consistently platforms people with incredibly genocidal rhetoric who he barely pushes up against, or will bring on people like Jeremy Corbyn, where he just spends the entire time trying to get him to condemn Hamas and not actually saying a single word. Like, they didn't even have a conversation. It was like 14 minutes straight of like, do you condemn Hamas? Do you condemn Hamas? I need to know, do you condemn Hamas? Are you condemning Hamas? Do you condemn Hamas at night? Are you condemning Hamas right now? Can I condemn Hamas? And then obviously it's like, well, what is the point of this? You are the Jerry Springer of the internet now. That's what Piers Morgan has become. So I don't want to give him any credit, even though undoubtedly he's probably going to be on the right side of this issue, where it's pretty abhorrent for white people to think that they should start saying the N-word again, just openly, and using that as an opportunity to, again, farm content out of Crowder. He lets Crowder speak uninterrupted without any kind of pushback, outside of Piers in this interview, by himself, which is something like, this is not a thing he grants to every single guest that he has on his show. And for someone as abhorrent and disgusting as Steven Crowder, accused of sexually assaulting his coworkers by multiple different coworkers at this point, his wife of abusing her, and you can see some of that abuse caught on camera on their Ring phone call video. Not to mention, effectively just turning his empire of bigotry, if it turns out he is in fact closeted, if he is a bisexual or a homosexual, he's been using his platform for nothing but decided evil to make the lives of people who are gay scarier. That's what he does for a living every day. It's like, oh, what sketch do we got today? Oh, what about a gay guy who eats poo? Yeah, and then all of you dress in assless chaps, and I'll whip you, and then I'll rub cream on your bodies, and then it'll be a scene, and then we'll own the libs.
Look, a large part of what you've just said, I completely agree with. I do think language has been weaponized. I hate cancel culture. I think it's the epitome of woke bullshit, etc., etc. But rather like with free speech itself, when people say that free speech is unlimited, it's actually not unlimited. I mean, you could say whatever you want right now. It doesn't mean you won't be held accountable by others for what you say. So everything has consequences, right? I would never restrict your ability to say what the hell you like. That's fine. But there are limitations. The First Amendment in the United States Constitution is one of the most protective shields to free speech anywhere in the world. And yet it has a number, as you know, of exclusions of things that are not covered by the First Amendment. So I think this whole kind of, when people say, well, anything goes, well, it actually doesn't anything go.
Hold on a second, like what?
Well,
like what exclusions? Because I think we need to define it. Like, what exclusions? Are you going to do the fire in a crowded theater thing?
No, I'm going to do.
If
you look up the First Amendment and look at the exclusions, paedophilia, pornography, things like that are not covered by First Amendment protection rights.
That's not speech. That's not speech. That's where you're conflating freedom of speech and freedom of expression, which many Democrats have done in the name of modern art.
I'm talking about exclusions to the First Amendment protection.
We were just talking about freedom of speech. Pedophilia has nothing to do with speech.
Defamation is not protected by the First Amendment. Did you know that?
Well, actually, your ability to criticize someone is. The ability to lie about someone knowingly, to cause damage, is not. Again, this is an action. It's not about speech that offends people. And so I think we're largely...
All he's semantically doing is trying to say that it changes. Speech no longer becomes speech at a certain point. It becomes a call to action if you're doing something else, even though that call to action is literally through speech. But that's not speech. No, that's a call to action.
But a lie, hang on, that's an interesting point. Hang on, Steve. Because if you lie, you're still exercising your right to free speech. But if you deliberately, willfully lie about somebody and cause them harm and damage that can be established in a court of law, and you are found guilty of defamation, you can't use the First Amendment as protection. We agree on that, right?
Of course, I understand it. That's not speech. That's not the point of the speech, right? For example, if I say, and I'm not saying this, let's say Kanye West's recent single, right? That's a problem. It's offensive. I think we would both agree that it's borderline, at least anti-Semitic. Would we agree on that?
Borderline.
Sorry, just say
it again. Are you talking about the song Hail Hitler by Ye?
Sure what you're saying.
Kanye West's recent song, right, his recent banger, we both agree it's at least on the line of anti-Semitic, right?
Yeah, I don't
think that anyone out there...
Yeah, listen, I think that a guy who has spent the last year is bestowing the virtues of Adolf Hitler and the Nazis, who's been
Yes,
selling
I
swastika. No, but I think it's an important clarification.
Okay,
because
I agree with you.
I'll tell you why, because he would argue that the actual words of the record are not anti-Semitic, right? And it's
Sure.
hard, but the fact he's got millions of people running around chanting Heil Hitler, clearly, to me, is an extreme form of anti-Semitism by
Yes.
a man who knows what he's doing.
I agree with you. Okay, I just wanted a yes or no because I wanted to
Well, yeah,
get
but
to the point.
it's
But I agree with you.
complicated. It's complicated simply
Well, it's not that
because
complicated. It is
it's
anti-Semitic,
complicated
right?
because the actual lyrics, he would argue, are not anti-Semitic. He's trying to be clever,
Okay.
and I don't think we should give him the pass.
Okay, I agree. I'm trying to create a really, really blatant, obvious analogy here to make a point. So we both agree that it's anti-Semitic. I think it's bad. I think saying Hail Hitler is bad. Okay. That is not,
Brave.
however, a violation in any way. Your First Amendment protects it. Now, saying I would like to, I am calling you to enact what Hitler has enacted, that's a call to action. Defamation requires damages. And I want to get to this because this does matter. Okay. When we're talking about this new song, and as a comedian and as a linguist, I'm going to.
Okay, so I'm sure all of you have probably seen a version of this before on the internet. The two white people debating whether it's okay to say the N-word debate. Happens a lot, actually, way more than it should, and yeah, it's pretty gross. So I'm gonna skip past it to the point where the Steven Crowder gets an education. Hey, Piers Morgan, I thought your show was called Uncensored. Care to explain why you felt the need to literally censor my words? See if you can catch it. And it's censored, so that's why I'm gonna play it.
Comedian and as a linguist, I'm going to say the word here
As
so
a
that
linguist.
everybody knows, and that's what you're going to clip. We're looking at words that are offensive. A song.
I didn't catch that the first time. Why is he saying that he's a linguist? What a weird thing to say. Why do right-wingers keep doing this? You'll have them sit there across from someone else and like Jordan Peterson has said, well, as an evolutionary biologist, it's like, you're not that though. You can't just say that. like Richard Dawkins can say that, but then he can't say as a neurologist. Or he couldn't say as a psychologist, as a trained psychologist. You'd be like, you're not that though. You're not that. You can't just say that thing.
That is offensive, but one is a boogeyman word. We have one noun, a verb, and a noun. Okay, we have a noun by itself, contextually. That's bad. Shouldn't say it, but it's not imbued with any power.
Are you doing like 3-card Monty for the N-word right now? Are you trying to do a little magic trick, hoping that it'll just get past everybody? No, I never said it. I was doing sounds, and then nouns, sounds, and then it's an adverb, and then a verb. I conjugate it. This is actually the Spanish word for black, so it's not offensive. But anyways, Piers responded with, yeah, sure, you said the N-word, and we don't allow that on our show. It's not about censorship. It's about respect for black people. So, Crowder, so abhorrent, getting, wins for Piers Morgan.
Completely repellent and disgusting. But in terms of what Stephen said about, this is heading to a dangerous area if you weaponize words generally, is he right?
In the abstract, sure. I mean, I think if you weaponize a bunch of words and people don't have the safe space to say what they want or say what they believe, it could be a very dangerous space because what I find to be offensive, you may not. What I find to be extreme, you may find to be moderate. What I may see as outside the proverbial Overton window, you may not. And so you never want to get into a place, to use Stephen's language, where we're just doing the linguistic whack-a-mole. I agree with that wholeheartedly. But I don't think that's what's at issue here. I think there are a few things. You all said a bunch of interesting things that I want to that I want to get at. The first thing is, I guess, to Stephen's initial point about my self-emasculation. At the thought, I wasn't melting down, as some on the right have said, because I was afraid that this boogeyman N-word was going to pop out of her mouth and I was going to fall away. That wasn't the point at all. I think you actually characterized it properly, Piers. I was frustrated not at the looming threat of the N-word coming out of her mouth. It was at the spectacle that I felt like in that moment was being created that was wholly unnecessary. And again, I don't think you were doing it intentionally at my expense, but we're all hosts. There's a moment where you got somebody on the ropes, and we know it's a good moment. We know it's a big moment. And getting a white person to say the N-word, it's like A Few Good Men. It's like, did you order, it's the Jack Nicholson moment, right? If you can get them to do that, that's a big moment. And I get that. I guess my point at the time was, it's not the smoking gun that we think. White people don't lie about using the N-word. They lie about not using the N-word. If she already said, I use the N-word in private. So no one pretends to use the N-word when they don't. So I actually didn't think that we needed that confession out of her. For me, as far as the other point here, I don't accept Stephen's analysis here of the donations to the campaign. even if he is right that people were donating out of some political reaction to our hypersensitivity as a society, that's the wrong person to do it to. Do it to the person that's getting doxxed because they made a mistake 10 years ago. Do it to the person who rapped the N-word, on Gold Digger and suddenly has lost their ability to go to college. There's all kinds of people who we might say, even if we don't agree fully on the context, who we could say, hey, is a better example of the cause. But as you said, Piers, this is somebody who was using the word in the exact context that we're afraid of, or not afraid of, in the exact context that we're frustrated about, in the exact context that we think it's being used in. And so to dump money, almost $800,000 into her coffers, it ultimately rewards her for using that language. Imagine if an arsonist were to set a building on fire, and all three of us agreed that that arson should not get the death penalty. I think we will probably all agree on that. But if we were to then take $1 million and dump it in their GoFundMe to fund the arsonist's legal defense, and now they get off, is that the right way to do it? Is that the right call? There might be other ways to do it than to fund the person who's
Mr. Crowder has very politely raised his right hand to speak, which I think is a rare example of good manners on this program.
Oh, what a baby.
Stephen, your response.
Well, it's the Canadian. I mean, actually, Dr. Hill and I have go a while back on Fox News. And like I said, he's always been a gentleman. And I do accept I saw him on a podcast later explaining that he didn't know who the guest was going to be. This is after the fact. And I have a much greater understanding now. I also get it. I will say, great, now do stabbing. And I think I know what the answer is going to be. Can we both, if we want to find common ground here, agree that, yeah, we really find ourselves at a weird point in this country when a bunch of people are giving to a lady who yells the N-word at a 5-year-old, and a bunch of people are giving to someone who is famous for no other reason than allegedly stabbing an innocent person? I know that we'll say it's because innocent until proven guilty, but this is the information that we have on both of these scenarios at this point in time. And what I'm discussing is the prescription moving forward. And one final thing. Here's the point that I was making that you didn't show in that clip too, was saying that it's racist for someone to say they would prefer to live in a predominantly white neighborhood, or they would prefer to live in their neighborhood, which is not black, I believe is what they said. And I don't believe it was necessarily her. I believe there was a man on the panel who said that, but you do. And I'm not going to attribute racism in your heart because only 4% of the population where you're placed in Los Angeles is black. I think we need to stop attributing and imbuing hatred, and I think we need to stop empowering them. But we do find ourselves at a...
Was that by choice? Did he say out loud, I'm specifically moving to this part of LA because I know it's going to have the highest percentage of white people? Then yes, that would be very racist. Just be like, well, based on the demographics of where you live, which I happen to know offhand, you don't live around a lot of black people. So is that racist just by itself? These are the same thing, apparently.
Point in this country where neither of these give, send, goes would have blown up if it existed 10 years ago. Why? How'd we get here?
I actually, well, Mark, I'll get you to respond. I have to say, in a way, completely different scenario, but how we got here, I think the same blame can be attached to how we got here to what is going on with the reaction to Joe Biden's health news. I made a point last night on X when that story broke. I was staggered by the instantaneous mockery, abuse, glee, ecstasy, desire for him to die that poured out in response to my tweet revealing this news about him having aggressive advanced stage 4 prostate cancer metastasizing to his bones, which is clearly an incredibly serious situation for a man of his age. And I just made the point, the guy served his country for 50 years, whatever you think of it, this is the moment just to wish him well, isn't it? The answer was no, and has carried on being no for the next 24 hours in the most stunningly abusive, horrific, ghastly manner, totally inhumane to me. And I think the common theme, Stephen, of the two things is social media. Social media has, I think, inflamed social and racial tensions to a point where people just don't think the normal rules of society apply. They can be as disgusting.
That's another reason I hate Piers so much, is that, like, why in the world are you using any of the empathy, what little we have left, for a horrifying war criminal like Joe Biden? And then to sit there and like, I just think it's absolutely ghastly and worth bringing up out of context in the middle of my show about how upset I was that people are actually celebrating, in some cases, someone's very serious cancer diagnosis. And I guess they just don't take cancer seriously. And it's like, I mean, as he's recording this, we have stories coming out of NBC about how 14,000 children, babies, are potentially going to starve to death within a very short period of time in Gaza, and in part due to the actions of Joe Biden.
And inhumane and racist and sexist and whatever they want to be as they like, with no accountability in almost every case. And we've become almost neutralized to that kind of thing. And part of the problem is that when people like you and me, and Mark, I'm sure, launch staunch defenses of the right to free speech, the wrong ears take it as the right to be openly racist and all these other things with no accountability.
That's what Steven Crowder is, Piers.
They misunderstand what free speech actually entails. It doesn't mean you're never going to be held accountable for what you say. When Shiloh Hendricks said that she said the N-word, whatever, this was her right to free speech. Yeah, but everybody else has a right to hold you accountable for it. And it's the second part of that equation, which is, I think, important. So, Stephen, your response to my thesis.
Yeah. Yes, I disagree. I think social media is a part of it, but I also don't think that we're dealing with an accountability culture as far as the country. I think we're dealing with a false accountability culture as far as the media and those in the establishment. You have myself, for example, who was demonetized, throttled on YouTube for simply using the term lispy queer, someone who referred to themselves as a lispy queer. It was a quote. Then moved over to Rumble, and after the Exodus DI,
he's talking about like the second adpocalypse of YouTube. It was way more than that, Stephen. You're not telling the full story. What t-shirts were you selling? What t-shirts were you selling for children? What did they say on them? His response would be, oh, it said figs. Figs. Yeah, like the fruit. That's it. It's not a slur. What, are you going to cancel me for saying figs? Selling shirts for little babies and children, you know, that have implied homophobic slurs on them?
in charge of 80% of the world's advertising, told Rumble that it wasn't enough to demonetize myself, but that they wouldn't spend a dollar of advertising on the entire platform, an alternative platform to YouTube, unless I was removed. You've had entire governments trying to remove platforms for freedom of speech. This is not the accountability that people in the streets are calling for. What is being called for example, from people in the media, is a lie. They would rather hear a lie than the truth. And so you have people checking out. For example, someone's afraid to say, could be my black neighbors, but it's anecdotal. I'm not supposed to say the black friend thing. Move to the same neighborhood I have because it's safer and there's a stronger sense of community. But if you want me to lie to you and say, I picked that neighborhood and it just so happens to be more mixed or more white, but my neighbor's a former Dallas Cowboy, you can demand.
Only a white supremacist would think this was a cause to talk about. Who wrestles with this? Like, who's constantly thinking about this in their head, where it's like, look, I just want to speak up for, I think, the people who have no voice. And that happens to be very affluent white people who want to move to other neighborhoods and want to look up before they move there how many white people and what percentage of whiteness is going to be in that community. And then other people say that those people are racist. I want to speak up for that. For the people calling the people who want to intentionally move to another neighborhood so they can only be around white people. They're not racist. That's what we need to talk about right now.
And a lie, but the media is demanding the lie, not the American people. I am in no way concerned going down to a black neighborhood because I do it to the tune of hours, hundreds of hours of footage.
Stephen, recording content to basically mock black people is not the same as people who are intentionally moving to other neighborhoods because they want to be away from black people. You understand that, right? And I think you can make a case that in both cases, it's probably a racist. It's probably a racist doing it in both situations.
And hundreds of millions of views discussing these issues. The challenge I run into is when
Marc's face. Yeah, I don't know if he knew or knows everything about Steven Crowder. Like, Piers certainly either knows enough that he's willing to be like, oh, he's not that bad. Oh, some people say he's a hate monger. This dude is a bigot. That's all he does on his show 24/7. He's just like actively trying to make trans people be eradicated from society. That's Steven Crowder. If he's not doing that, he's being racist. When he's not being racist, he's being homophobic. When he's not being homophobic, he's doing homophobic sketches and doing specific homophobic sketches that gets him the ability to see shirtless men and rub oils on them and stuff like that. But again, it's to own the libs. It's complex.
Someone else, a third party, wants to play a game of telephone and tell them that it's racist. You can go and watch. I had not one, not two, but 10 people in this installment say, yeah, I think all lives matter. I think anyone who says that's white supremacy is out of their mind. They don't speak for us, the black community. I'd never know.
I love how we brought this up as an example. It's like, and by the way, I'm not one of those people, okay? I'm not saying that I want to, like, I am racist, like the people accused of racism. I actually go to black communities all the time, and I film segments there, and I got them all to agree with me. All lives matter. Yeah, so checkmate.
That unless I had that conversation with them. Very few people are doing it. You're demanding a lie of people.
Okay, Marc, your response.
Lots of things again. First, I think Stephen is, and I don't assign to you any ill intent, but you're comparing apples and oranges here.
I would.
When we talk about the Carmelo Anthony and the racist woman, I can't think of her name, video.
Lily Gaddis.
I think, as you pointed out
Charlotte
all day.
Hendricks,
No, not Lily Gaddis, but
you're talking about Charlotte Hendricks.
He's getting them mixed up. There's so many. There's too many.
Context. I think we have to look at context and the context even of these GoFundMes, right? The people who are funding Carmelo Anthony, you can tell this from the comments. This isn't my guess. They're not saying good job. They're saying we don't believe that you're guilty. we don't believe that you've gotten a fair legal process, and so we're sending money to make sure that you get a proper legal defense because we don't believe that you are guilty of this crime. That is what they're saying. Now, you and I may look at the evidence and come to the same conclusion or a different conclusion, but they're not attempting to reward the behavior. They're attempting to challenge a system that they feel like is misrepresenting the behavior. In the case of the
Marc is so eloquent, you know? Where again, like, I watch situations like this and, like, you know, I probably would have tried to interrupt Steven Crowder like 4 times in the middle of his, like, you know, nonsensical racist rant. But just to be like, I'm just going to get to the very core of this. These are 2 completely different situations because in one, the woman was filmed doing the thing that we are accusing her of doing, so we know that she did it. In the other, people believe this person to be innocent, so that they are trying to fundraise for his defense. That's why these 2 scenarios are not in any way the same.
N-word. And this woman, right, Charlotte, what's happening is quite different. They're not saying, hey, we feel like she's taken such a loss from her free exercise of free speech that we want to reimburse her for that. That would be a different argument. I still wouldn't want to do it, but that would at least be logically and morally consistent. When you look in the comments and when you talk to people who are funding that campaign, they are literally shouting the N-word. They are literally echoing the racial epithet. And that is different. That's why I say, if this is really going to be a First Amendment cause, again, and not the lie that you're talking about, then let's invest in actual First Amendment causes and not this. And to your second point, there is, I agree, and then I got you wholeheartedly. I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with making decisions about where you want to live. But there's a huge difference between saying, I want to live in a statistically safe neighborhood, or I want to live in a historically safe neighborhood, and I don't want to live around black people under any circumstances. And again, the latter is what came out in our conversation on the show the last time. And we're melding those 2 things as if they are the same, and then acting as if there's just no room for a white person, or a black person for that matter, to exercise any radical honesty about where they want to live. I ain't met a person yet that doesn't want to live in a safe neighborhood. I want to live in a safe neighborhood. I also want to live around black people. People can make their own choices, but let's not pretend they're the same thing.
Okay, we've got to end it there.
Yeah.
I would say, in answer to your question, Stephen, I would say in both the GoFundMe cases, I think it's wrong. I think the intentions...
Stabbing is worse than a word.
I think the intentions on both sides are actually...
What a fucking baby. So, as I predicted, perfect centrism. I mean, it's good. He's even framed in the middle this time, so you know how centrist he truly is, right? I believe both scenarios are bad. Both wrong. Well, Steven can one-up you. You know, he can right away be like, stabbing is worse than words. One of them is, a black kid who stabbed a white kid. He was stabbed by him. And you're saying a word is worse. I can't believe this.
Malevolent and wrong. They're not doing it out of any great sense of social justice or anything. They're doing it because they're taking a side based on skin color in both those stories, I think. So I think...
murder is worse than yelling.
Yeah, listen.
I think.
Keep going. Again, this is the thing that little babies do. We're just like, yeah, I can jump in the pool. It's like, okay, good. But anyways, we need to talk about what time bedtime is, and we need to. No, I want to go in the pool now. It's like, yeah, I know you want to, but again, we got to talk about, it's bedtime.
Allegedly stabbing someone to death is worse than
getting
using an ugly
railroaded
word.
is a worse outcome than getting held accountable for using the N-word.
But Stephen's point is the one is worse than the other.
I don't think we can end this on this, Pierce. I can take 30 seconds here. If we're
Right,
talking about
right,
accountability, like I said, there's false accountability.
But
Are you against catch and release?
that
Are you
framing
against
suggests the money is going for the behavior.
I feel like his brain is melting down and he's just now going in the dialogue tree of all his fucking racist gotchas. Oh, what? Are you for catch and release? What about cash bail? Are you for that? What about a revolving door prison system? Have you heard of 1350? I got to talk about 1350. Can we talk about that right now, Piers? Just give me 30 seconds. 30 seconds. I'll talk about 1350. And then I have to leave because I am definitely not comfortable in this discussion at all.
Under $1,000 or less, where a shopkeeper has to close down because of the name of systemic restorative justice? Are you against cash and release? Are you against cash bail? Are you against the idea that people can shoplift and not be held accountable for their actions? Let's talk.
Like again. Just crashing out as fast as like. Oh, sorry. This was originally a discussion about white people using the N-word, Stephen. Well, it's grown since then. All right, the scale is much bigger. Now it's about white kids getting stabbed to death by black kids. It's about black crime rates and safer cities. What makes them safer, do you think? Are you okay with crime, black on white crime? What do you have to say about that?
Accountability for actions and not false accountability for words. I believe that stabbing someone is worse than saying a word. Both are.
He said, why are you comparing these two things? What are you doing? I think Hitler is worse than Einstein. Yeah, it's not a brave statement. Why are you comparing these two things? That makes no sense. Like, I think a sunny day is better than a moldy pickle. Yeah. Okay. But what are we doing here? Like, these are completely different scenarios. One woman was caught doing something to which we know she's guilty of, and she got, again, for using a racial slur, hundreds of thousands of dollars given to her, simply for using a racial slur. In the other scenario, we have a situation in which, yes, innocent until proven guilty. We don't know the full details or where this is going to go in terms of a trial. There are people who believe that child is innocent, or sorry, that young man is innocent. So in that case, they are funding for his legal defense because he cannot afford a good legal defense otherwise. These are two completely different scenarios. Why are you, like, he's trying to leverage one against the other. I think stabbing is worse than words. One person was stabbed. Another said word.
Bad. Me, Mr. Traditional.
You know what?
Okay. Let me respond to that. Let me respond to that because, again, that is a disingenuous framing. No one is arguing that stabbing someone is better than using the word. My point is our response as a community to the stabbing is not to say, great job. Our response is, this was awful, but let's find out what really happened. No one is saying on the other side of this issue that N-word thing is awful, but let's hold this woman accountable, but let's not go too far. And if they are, I'm okay with that. But it's not apples and oranges. No one is saying what that woman did is worse than that kid getting stabbed. They're saying that the story of the stabbing hasn't been told well or properly, and we want justice for everybody. And
Gentlemen,
to answer your cash bail, yes, I'm against cash bail, but I don't believe I don't believe that's the only way to hold people accountable. You can hold people accountable without cash bail.
I've got to leave it there, not least Mark.
Also, I'm glad that he let Mark get the final word in there, but also, like, I don't think you need to address any of the rambling parts of what Stephen brings up. You know, because he's not being genuine. This is not good faith. He's not standing there bringing these points up so that he wants to have a conversation, explore them, and be like, I actually think that there is a parallel, you know, between, you know, catch and release, cash bail, the criminal justice system, the high rates of crime that can lead to neighborhoods being unsafe, and you know, the ability for white people to use the N-word. I think these are very fair arguments to make, and I want to hear your opinion on them. You can skip past, like, all the bullshit. It's like, again, he's trying to gish gallop and drop 20 things at once, and put people into a defensive position. Like, are you for teenagers getting stabbed? So are you pro teenage stabbing? If you're not, I don't know why you'd have this opinion, to be totally honest, because you can agree that, like, stabbing is worse than calling someone a word or a slur, right? Like, if they're stabbed to death, that's worse. I don't know why you'd be on the other side of that issue.
So you may have noticed some different music playing at the start of the show. That's because I wanted to make some new music with Chico. I'm going to upload a bunch of different themes to patreon.com/theserfs, where you can be the first to hear and vote on your favorite one, and then it'll become the official theme song for the show. And if you can't support that, hey, no worries, it'll all be available free at soundcloud.com/theserfstv. It's also in part a project to try and learn and revitalize the Michif language, which is the Métis language, and unfortunately, considered one of the world's languages, currently going extinct, unless we keep teaching it.
Don't let this happen to you. Go to serfscoffee.com to order the only end-to-end owned indigenous coffee company that delivers blood-free, conflict-free, and cruelty-free beans right to your door. 0% of people who drink serfscoffee.com have exploded spontaneously. By ordering right now, you get 10% off plus free shipping, and it's the best way to enjoy delicious coffee while not exploding. That's serfscoffee.com, serfscoffee.com.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. This video wouldn't be at all possible without the financial support of all the people whose names you see on the screen right now. And if you want to unlock secret bonus episodes, content that we can't post anywhere else, or get the videos early before anyone else gets to see them, please go on to patreon.com/theserfs. For as little as $1, you can help support this channel and help make more videos like this possible. Our executive producers are Anna Loves Riley, Adrian McCarthy, Bobby Lasers, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Garrett Sandoval, Hagbard Saline, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimondi, Omni, Political Papi, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Richard Boehm, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demel, Tigwick, Trav, and Words Greenwood. And also, it wouldn't be possible without all the names you see on the screen right now. Again, if you want to help produce this content, it's only made possible through the funding of our patrons. Head on down to patreon.com/theserfs. That's patreon.com/theserfs.